So in our online Elite Canine Athlete program, we frequently look at weekly programs, case studies. We discuss a weekly plan, the rationale behind it, and people find it really, really helpful to hear kind of the rationale and the thought process around designing a weekly program. So I just wanted to quickly walk through here with you, specifically looking at building up cardiovascular type of training. So if you look here, let's say that we have a dog that is more the sport is more a high intensity, short bursts of energy, speed, power, right? So that's something that we would see with like a dog doing lure coursing, dock diving. So the emphasis is more kind of on that kind of anaerobic, high intensity, power, speed versus, let's say, a herding dog or a sled dog, right? Who's going to be going over miles, many, many, many miles. So let's say that this person is doing a 1 hour hike off leash on a Sunday, 20 minutes on the treadmill, and let's say 30 minutes of off leash playing in the yard, and then they do dock diving on Saturday. So my first thought, the recommendation is to always have a foundation first. Before you start emphasizing things like jumping as high as you can jump or as far as you can jump, running as fast as you can, right? We want to have a nice solid fitness foundation first to ensure that the soft tissues, the tendons, the ligaments, they're all prepped for that higher intensity activity. So when you're doing things like, lure coursing, they're running as hard as they can. Dock diving, they're jumping as high. You're needing power and speed. This is putting more demands on the body, on the soft tissues, the tendons and ligaments than an activity that is less intense, right? So what we want to do is we want to build a foundation first with some more lower intensity and more consistency in building cardiovascular endurance before we start really pushing the dog more with things that are going to be harder on the body. So just like humans, when we think about like building up cardiovascular aerobic activity, we're looking at maybe a minimum of 20 minutes or more of just a continuous moderate exercise. So a trot, a nice steady trot would be a nice example for a dog. So the first thing I would do if a person brought this program to me and their goal was to have their dog jump higher or further or run faster is I would want to know this 1 hour off leash, like how intense is that? Is the dog stopping and sniffing at every couple trees? Are they resting, lying down, running, trotting? Is it continuous? Are they resting? That would be the first thing I would want to know. And then on the treadmill, I would want to know what's the intensity level. Are they trotting, running at high speed? What's happening? And then in the 30 minutes off leash, again, this is going to be similar to questions I would have about the hike. Is I would want to know, is this continuous movement? Is the heart rate coming up? Is it continuous? Is it high intense? Is the dog periodically stopping and resting, going under a tree, drinking water? Is it a male dog marking all the trees around the area where other dogs were? So I would get that information first. Then what I would do is, if this dog is already doing 3 days a week, I love, love, love that we already have 3 days that we could dedicate to building up a baseline foundation for the dog. So what I would recommend here would be for this off-leash hiking, I would want to build up more continuous, at least like just a nice easy trot. And the idea would be at least for 20 minutes to keep that dog having a nice continuous movement, elevating the heart rate, but not super high. Then on the treadmill, since they're only doing structured cardio, only 1 day a week right now, this is the only, other than dock diving, right, with this, which is more and lure coursing, more sprinting. What we have right here, we really only have 1 day a week with structured cardio. So what I would do is I would see if we could make Sunday might be, depending on how this off-leash activity is working. But most people, it's very unstructured when they do hiking like this. So what I would try to do is try to encourage the dog on Sunday to do just kind of some steady, continuous type activity, about a trot, and start doing more structured, kind of focused cardio training there. And then also for the off-leash play in the yard, depending on what that play looks like, I would maybe, to build a nice solid cardiovascular foundation for this dog, this would be a nice day if we could actually make it into more structured cardiovascular activity. That would be ideal. So if they already have 30 minutes and the dog's kind of playing in the backyard, maybe they're attended, supervised. If the owner has time for 30 minutes to structure activity, I would try to make that into more of a structured cardiovascular training. Again, I would build up the foundation first, which would be just less intense cardiovascular training, more on the endurance side. Then what I would do, and this could possibly take weeks to build up to, you may spend weeks or even a few months building up a nice, strong foundation, cardiovascular, aerobic, endurance type training. Then what I would do is over time, I would pick maybe, one day, one focused training day where I would now start to focus on making modifications that are more specific to the sport. That's going to be either more like sprinting, building in more power, more explosive movements. And so what I see a lot of people do is if their emphasis is a sport like dock diving, lure coursing, agility, what I see is they end up doing a lot of activities or very little, but the emphasis a lot of times is just the very sport specific, and they're doing more sprinting, more very short bursts of activity, short periods of time, maybe once or twice a week. And what they're doing a lot of times is they're completely ignoring building this nice solid foundation of just a nice cardiovascular endurance. And I would recommend for overall fitness and to ultimately see improved performance in dock diving or lure coursing or any of those, really any kind of fitness foundation, is building a nice foundation, building that endurance foundation first. And again, just like humans, minimum 15 minutes, 20 minutes, steady, continuous, get that heart rate up, not super, super high. Once you can get, I would say at least 3 days a week to build up to 3 days a week. You're not going to start with that if you're not already doing it, but over the weeks, over the coming months, build up to about 3 days, 4 days a week. Once you have that fitness foundation for cardiovascular endurance, building that up, then I would start saying, okay, now we're going to start ramping it up. Now we can start look at increasing one of these days. Let's look at the intensity. Let's start focusing more on power. Let's start focusing on speed. The danger of not building your foundation like this first is that you are very easily setting the dog up for the possibility of doing too much too soon, pushing the dog too quickly, too hard before the body has already been adapted to the exercise activity to strengthen them and get them prepped for that higher intense activity. So that's what I would recommend rather than just doing nothing but, lure course sprinting training or just doing dock diving, 2-3 days a week. You don't want to ignore building up that endurance, the cardiovascular endurance. Build that foundation first, because it's going to set your dog up for better success once you then start ramping things up and really emphasizing on that very sport specific higher intensity training. If you are not doing a sport like this or a canine job, if you are doing something that is more aerobic based and you are doing something more like dry land mushing, herding, searching, right? Search and rescue dogs, then this also would work really, really well, because you would be building up a really nice endurance foundation, cardiovascular endurance, a really nice aerobic foundation to build up that dog's capacity for doing that level of activity more in the longer duration endurance that you would see in some of those other sports and activities. Now, there's a whole nother argument also, though, if your activity is more of an endurance and more of an aerobic sport, there is an argument that your dog would greatly benefit also for some of that higher intensity anaerobic training. But we'll cover that another time because you don't want to start with that, right? You want to start with building a nice solid foundation first. And then, of course, we're not going to I'm not focusing on this today. I'm just focusing on kind of the cardiovascular endurance. But we cannot forget these other areas, because just like a human athlete, um, if we only do running and ignore flexibility or ignore strength training, again, we're setting our bodies up for imbalances. There's going to be strong in some areas, weak in other areas. And then these areas of weakness that you're ignoring, they are then setting the body up for injury, potential for injury, because we've kind of overtrained in one area and we've ignored others. So we need a very, very balanced fitness program where, even though our activity might be more of a cardio type activity that we're doing with our dog, to help our dog be more fit, healthier, minimize the risk of injury, we have to incorporate in our training these other areas of our fitness program. So if you'd like to learn more and also get skilled and confident in yourself in building a fitness program and a weekly program for your dog, I encourage you to check out our Elite Canine Athlete program. It's an online program, so no matter where you live, as long as you are an English speaker or can speak and follow along, then you can have access with a high-speed internet, and you have access no matter where you live in the world. But I encourage you to check it out. We are doing our enrollment, and I will put a link and make that available for you. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. But this is something that we take a deep dive, and people learn how to do this. We do case studies, we analyze programs, we design them, and basically people in the program, by the time they graduate, they know how to build this entire fitness program for different types of dogs, how to modify and tweak it depending on your sport, your job, your activity, your goals. This is exactly what we do in the program. So message me if you have any questions. Check out our website. We've got an application up there, and I look forward to hearing from you.